And so I started doing some more research on it, and I found that it was really quite interesting that I ended up titling all my paintings of that exhibition after certain types of synthesizers that have been made, and a lot of the synthesizers that were made came out of the UK, like Sheffield and stuff like that, and that's where a lot of those early pop bands, like, I don't know, OMD and stuff, and bands of that kind of nature came out of, and it's sort of like it's sort of part of like a cultural, an English kind of cultural thing. And then what was born out of those kind of movies, like, I don't know, Clockwork Orange, and so forth, that music, that science fiction kind of side, science fiction writers like J.G. Ballard and stuff like that. So it's an oral kind of thing that I could use as a bit of a leg up and to kind of create a bit of a context for my work, which is, it's music, I must say, has really played quite a huge part in my work. And
so, as an artist, Calandra, how do you translate something that is oral into something that is visual? What drives you to do that?
Great question, awesome question. So,
is that in your notes?
I think the other thing is also to sort of think about is as an artist, your studio becomes your universe, doesn't it? And, a lot of artists work during the day and they also work at night. So when the studio lights are on and the curtains are drawn, you either listen to the radio. For me, I used to listen to national radio. I used to listen to concert radio and, MP3s, and now I suppose Spotify as well. So, and constantly listening to certain types of music. So, with Spotify, it almost does a selection for you. If you start following a certain genre of music, it sort of starts layering up a certain type of sound that you like listening to. And so, back to your question about the
translation of oral to visual. Oral to visual.
Famous New York composer John Cage from the 1950s. Now, what's really interesting about John Cage is that he was a composer. He was in New York in the 1950s, the same time as the abstract expressionist movement was sort of starting. And so there was kind of a connection between art and music, and kind of that way that the application of paint was put on the canvas, like Jackson Pollock, like Franz Klein, and so forth. They were all kind of connected, and also the writers as well. And all the writers in New York, in Greenwich Village, the composers and artists, they all used to hang out at this one bar in Greenwich Village, and it was called the Cedar Tavern. And it was blue collar by day, and at night all the artists used to come in, and this is where this kind of dialogue and conversation kind of occurred. And so John Cage was a really kind of interesting kind of guy, because he was a minimal music composer. Now, a lot of these artists from this time and period were really interested in this type of minimal music that was being produced, and a lot of the compositions that he produced had artist titles, like there was music for Jackson Pollock, music for Franz Klein, and so forth. And I suppose with Cage, is that he made kind of really kind of interesting kind of musical scores as well, and his musical scores were in the 1950s, because there was so many there was a lot of change happening in America. America was becoming, it was post-war. America, it was all about the sort of TV generation. TV generation was happening. Game shows. The palette of colour is coming into vogue. Magazines like Time Life, Post magazine. The cars were bigger. Fast foods were starting to happen. So he was basically looking at that this new America from a kind of a different angle, And so what he would do in his musical scores is that he would take different types of things, different types of objects, and meld them together, and he'd get different musicians to play them at different kind of times and sequences, and it would almost be like a cacophony of kind of different sounds, but you could draw bits out. And so what I thought is, how can I talk about the time that we live in now, because we live in the internet age, don't we? Which is it is a cacophony of noise and sound, and how can we kind of distill it in a certain kind of way? So the lines and patterns is sort of like a tracing of spaces and the movement, and the colours are sort of a musical kind of stations.
Ah, right.
So did you bring along something visual that would help or assist us to kind of understand what you're talking about? You could even show us a poster if you like of your of your new.
About that.
It's fabulous.
Look at that.
So the blue is the stations. Is that how you describe them?
This is a work which is composed of 12 sheets of paper.
It's like tiles.
Yeah, sort of like tiles. And I call it art to travel with. So basically what you could do is that you could install it anywhere. The work's 2 metres square, and you could just turn up with your little suitcase and a little packet of pins, and you can install it. So it's sort of like poster art, or sort of almost like ready-made art. And
does it always have to be assembled the same way? That's the other question.
That's another good question. You could reassemble it, but it could change the nature and notion of the overall composition.
Would that matter?
Well, yes.
I suppose it would. I suppose it would, because it would change the three-dimensional kind of quality of it.
Oh, okay. I was just thinking if you wanted to put in lines around the bathroom or something like that.
I suppose you could. But actually, what's hidden? There's actually 2 paintings hidden within here. Now, I'll let you come along to the exhibition.
Okay.
And I'll let you come along to the artist talk, which is going to be on the 5th.
Of
Saturday
May.
the 5th of May at 11. And so I'm going to do a little bit more. I'll basically give more of a kind of a background on...
What time on the 5th?
11 a.m.
Will you pick me up, Bridget?
Is that a Friday?
No, it's Saturday.
It's a Saturday morning.
Let me just check my diary, because that's ringing a horrible bell with me.
Okay, well, I'm going.
That is ringing a bell with me. Sorry to do this.
11 o'clock.
No, I'm house sitting. So.
Oh, doesn't mean you can't come along and listen to
Well,
that.
I'm meant to be there at midday, so it'd be a bit of a scramble.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Sorry about that.
I'll ask another friend.
You'll have to ask that. Otherwise, I would be your buddy for that.
Yeah. It sounds fascinating.
So I put in my apologies now.
It's okay.
It reminded me when you first held it up, and I don't have my glasses on.
Yes.
So that was the impression. My first impression was, is it a LED window? Is it one of those LED lights?
It has got that kind of LED light kind of lights, as lights sort of passing through. So the work itself, I could say, has got all those kind of references. Like, it could be a LED light window, it could be a television screen, sort of scrambled. It's because it's 2 meters square. I sort of want the viewer to sort of take in kind of an overall kind of sensory kind of saturation of the idea of just the pure enjoyment sometimes of just looking at colour.
Yeah, absolutely, completely. So how is that done? What paint did you use, or maybe not paint at all?
So I use...
It's obviously not a watercolour, even to my inexpert eye.
So it's sort of like it's sort of like the slow food movement.
Yummy.
It's hand painted. It's quite time consuming. So every I use like a poster paint.
Oh.
Like a flat poster paint. I batch mix up lots and lots of colours, and so there may be like 10 or so colours in there. And the colours, the most interesting part of it is the colours have come from nature. So what I do is I'll take a series of photographs of certain things. Let's say I might take some screen grabs from the internet, maybe. I might take some landscape photos. And I use my Photoshop eyedropper tool, and I pick the colour out of the image and print the image out, and then I recreate the image as a painted colour.
So this is a really horrible question for artists, I know, but are these pieces for sale?
Some are for sale.
Some, okay.
Yes, some are for sale.
So some you've already sold, and so they're...
No, I'm actually hoping to keep them for a little bit longer. I'm just trying to keep a little bit. I'm trying to keep a little bit of stock.
Well, yes, because the other thing that we didn't cover was that you've actually got simultaneously another exhibition in Auckland.
Yes, I have. So I've been working quite hard, and the reason why I'm having two shows simultaneously is a little bit out of my. It's more to do with the booking schedule in the gallery in Auckland, and you normally book 2 years in advance, and you sort of book your slot, and that's that, and then you work towards it. And so this show is in Auckland at NKB Gallery, and it's called
Still Life with Landscape. Mm. When does that open?
That's opening on the 10th of May. So that's a new body of work, and those works are for sale. So there's 9 paintings, and again, sort of looking at the object and within the landscape. And so for each show that I do, of course there are new images placed in there, but there's also a new palette of colour, and the palette of colour that I'm using for Still Life of Landscape varies from Minimal Wave Revisited. This palette of colour, which I'll use for a couple of years, for 2 years, is based on Pantone trending colours. So the Pantone trending colours is from a company in America called Pantone, and they make standard colours that are used in the printing industry, and also they create colours which are new colours which we see in clothing, in product design, and in all manner of things. And
probably in hair as well.
Yes, in hair. In all manner of things. So in this year, the trending colours in Pantone right now are pink and blue. So sort of like baby pink, baby girl pink, pretty pink, and pretty boy blue pink. So I don't know if you've seen those colours around, but I was talking to someone at the gallery, and it's pink is quite the fashionable colour at the moment, I think, right now. So I suppose because we see those kind of colours everywhere, I sort of like to sort of document. I think, as with all things, paintings are a kind of a document of time, really, and the time that we kind of live in, and the canvas and the artist and who we are and what we do is just a space in the medium to reflect who we are. And every now and then I like to pull up a quote. So I've got a quote.
Lovely, I love a quote. Good quote. Can't beat a good quote.
This is a quote from Henry Matisse, 1945. And his quote is this: "A young artist must be aware that he does not have to invent everything anew. His job is to sort out in his mind the compatibility of the different approaches in the works of art that impress him and at the same time question nature." I really like that. I really like that a lot.
Question nature. That's interesting. How do you question nature?
Well, nature continues to evolve, I think, as well, and adjust, because our environment keeps changing.
That's right.
Especially with what we're doing at the moment to the environment. And it's interesting now what humans are doing to resolve some of those issues.
Yeah.
But often you'll find a whole species will adapt, and the same with plant life. It all comes and goes.
Yeah, and the fact that we'll be eating probably cricket flour, pretty soon.
High protein.
High protein. It's just one of those things. I suppose the nature is the environment we live in, and for me, it's the technological landscape more than anything else, and I suppose how it's changing us really, and I suppose when I look back to kind of like earlier paintings and earlier shows. The first painting that I'm putting in the exhibition, which is I'm going to have in the foyer, is sort of like a departure painting, because I was painting in a certain way, and then I started to make a decision, post reading the quote, what artist do I like? And I found that a lot of them were talking about the landscape, and they were talking about light, and they were talking about colour, and they were talking about an age that they were living in, and which wasn't too dissimilar from the age that we were living in now, really. It was about, like Cézanne, for example. I mean, he was French, and he was living in Paris, and there was the industrial age. There would have been a lot of pollution. There would have been a lot of mechanisation. There would have been, a lot for him to take in as subject matter. So he was one artist that I decided to have a look at, along the ways. And then there was a British artist, Bridget Riley. She's an English painter, and she actually used one of his paintings as a model for her own work, and then developed her own style out of Cézanne's paintings.
What's this little book that you've got?
I've got this little book here. This is my little catalogue here. But I thought I'd just show you this. This one here is going to be the first painting. This is the catalogue.
The London Underground. Please mind the gap.
Please mind the gap. So I was living in we were living in Kingsland, and our studio and house was sandwiched in between New North Road and Kingsland train station. We lived pretty much opposite Kingsland train station. So I did travel overseas prior, and there was the Mind the Gap over the PA, but there was also Mind the Gap at the Kingsland train station, and you could hear it. It was coming in every 15-20 minutes, and I thought, what a nice title, Mind the Gap. So I was also, at the time, I was looking at Google Earth, and I thought, how could I incorporate Mind the Gap, the title, with Google Earth paintings? So I decided to do a series of plein air paintings from satellites, from space. So I'd be sitting up there in my little easel in space, looking down on the Earth. So this is the first painting, and it's quite a
Hold it.
It's quite a large painting. You might not. It doesn't matter if you can't see it. It's a painting of a Google Earth landscape. Oh, there it is.
Gone to it.
There
time
it is.
Lag. There was a gap.
Time, but there was a gap. Mind the gap. Mind the gap. So that's the first painting, and that's been painted quite expressionistically, and it's a wet on wet kind of technique where you kind of layer it up. The painting itself is 2.5 by 1.8 metres, and it hasn't been shown since 2009, so it's going to be a really nice opportunity to re-show that work. But so this was a sort of a kind of like a departure painting. But what I painted what I drew on the other side of the wall, I don't know if you can see that. Oh, it's very hard to see.
Your camera is that white thing.
It's right there, is it? Oh, there it is. Anyway, it might crop.
You talk.
I'll keep talking. There it is, a series of tyres. So I was talking about the landscape here on this side, the man-made and the environmental kind of change, and how man is kind of influencing nature and changing nature. And this particular painting is rotational crop circles. So it's food production and harvesting. It's about food production and harvesting, and this is pretty much the waste that's produced from man-made production. So there's stacks of tyres forming hay bales of sorts. But so this is a large work on paper, and quite an early work as well. So, and this particular work on paper sort of kickstarted for me kind of a more graphic way of working.
You mentioned about the size of these paintings, and you said when you were in space you had your little easel. Would it be that little?
It wasn't. It wasn't. Normally the space is kind of determined. The space sort of determines the to a degree, the work that I'm going to create, and also the work was cited for a particular gallery, and in this case it was Lopdale House Gallery. So I had the dimensions of the gallery space where I showed the work, and the studio space that I was working was quite large as well. But since I've moved down here, I'm working in a smaller space, and yeah, you can't keep making large works because there's a storage issue, and potentially there's less likely that you can sell the work to people because they don't have the walls to show
That's
the work
a
as
consideration,
well.
isn't it?
So henceforth, that's why I was decided to work on paper and to work on these gridded works. So if someone was interested in purchasing the work, or I was interested in displaying the work in different spaces and places, I could just turn up somewhere with my little suitcase and install the work in a fashion.
Portability, miniaturisation, even in art.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Thank you so much, Adrian. That went incredibly quickly.
Have we had half an hour?
We're at half an hour.
It's been like
almost.
101 in history of art and all sorts of other interesting
It
things.
has.
It's been fabulous.
So it just, and people out there in Radio Land, you may not realise this, but Wairarapa TV is recording this as well. So you will be able to, hopefully, flick on to Wairarapa TV and watch this later down the track. And honestly, I wouldn't miss the artist talk. So Adrian's new exhibition is opening on Saturday the 4th or 5th?
So it's opening on Friday the 4th.
Friday the 4th.
At 5:30.
But Saturday the 5th is the artist talk.
At 11 a.m.
Right. So, it would be an absolutely fabulous opportunity for anyone out there. And, of course, if you're up in Auckland, there is the opportunity to go and look at a new body of work by Adrian, and that opens at...
That opens at NKB Gallery on the 10th of May at 6 p.m. in NKB's in Mount Eden.
Great.
So
when does it finish? When?
So that show's running from the 10th to the 31st of May. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for coming in this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
We've thoroughly enjoyed it.
We absolutely
yes,
have.
And I
It's
have to
been
say
wonderful.
out to those people that won't be using the link to Wairarapa TV, you have actually missed Hugh, much better, much more handsome and younger version of Hugh Jackman's family.
We have Adrian Jackman on the program, not Hugh Jackman, for those who are getting
Exactly.
really excited out there.
So make sure you don't miss it. Switch on, see the comparison. Okay, we're going to actually put a little song on so you can slide out very, very gracefully.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll catch up with you soon again,
Thank you very
Adrian.
much.
Great.
Cheryl, I'm going to get...
When I was in Riverhead, I wanted to tell you that I was dead. My
morning and welcome back. You're listening into Carterton Connections again with Cheryl and Bridget.
Hello.
And proudly sponsored by the Carterton District Council, of course. Now, Adrian has left the studio and we've invited our next guest to come in. Now, Rebecca, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
I'm not allowed to say no, am I?
No, you can't say no.
I'm Rebecca Stevens and I'm the principal at Morrisville School. I've been there for 10 years now, so I'm pretty much part of the furniture.
Wow, 10 years. Okay, so I know it's a little rural school, but it's in a very eclectic rural school. We were just talking about the fact that you have a dog that comes in.
Oh, we've got 2 dogs that come in. Yes, so we have Bruno and Jessie, both are rescue dogs, and we've also got a pet pig that just wandered down the road one day and we opened the gate and in she came.
Oh, hello. Obviously didn't want to be bacon, so came to your place for sanctuary.
Yes, she was found as a piglet, a wild piglet, and the man that found her looked after her, so she's just like another dog, really. She's very tame and likes having her stomach scratched, and
yeah, they
eats all
reckon
the
they're
scraps.
like 2-year-olds, don't they? Sort of with a lot of intelligence.
Yeah.
So, can I ask you, To, what makes Morrisville so different from the other schools within the Wairarapa?
There's lots of reasons that we're unique. One is our size. So we currently have 29 students. We'll be starting next term on 32. We had 18 at the beginning of the year, so our role's almost doubled in the last term. And we have an incredibly supportive community of parents, but also community members who live in our area. And out of our 29 students, 22 of them actually bus out from Masterton.
Wow. Now, I'm just want to sort of, radio people, you can't see this, but viewers, when you watch this later, you'll see Rebecca's arm moving. We have Lottie in studio to provide a little bit of comfort and security as well.
Lottie's a dog.
Yes,
Yes.
just a tad nervous.
And look, it's actually okay to be nervous, because this is a little bit about what you're showing the children of feel the fear and do it anyway, because
Totally.
even when Bridget and I regularly fail.
Spectacularly.
Last week we didn't even realise that we were going to be on air, did we? We didn't. We hadn't even bothered to brush our hair. I
You
hadn't.
didn't tell me I was
I
going to be
cleaned
on
my teeth,
film.
but I hadn't put on my Hillary Barry earrings.
But learning's all about taking risks, so it's all good.
It is. It absolutely is. So Morrisville is very special in that 22 children from Masterton all bust out.
Yes, yeah. So we're very lucky, and they're all part of our school family as well. So we say that we're a small school, a big family.
I think it's a lovely motto. I think you should
It
adopt
is.
that as your proper motto.
Well, our proper motto is learning together, learning forever. So that's pretty
bit
good
more
too.
serious,
yeah.
but,
And we do all learn together. So we've got parents and family doing teacher aid courses and things that we're supporting them through.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because life is about learning, and you don't want to get stayed and stuck in one place.
You want to learn forever.
Totally.
Never stop learning till you're on your deathbed, really, and even then you can learn something probably. So
Yeah.
Yeah. Same with my job. I say I learn something new every day. Like a lot of your, with that little school, you're a little bit further out than most schools too. So I guess there's advantages and disadvantages to that.
Well, we're actually only about 20 minutes out of Masterton, so it's not as bad as people think. It's much better than peak hour traffic in Wellington, which is where I came from, so it doesn't seem very far at all. Yeah.
So who puts the bus on and who provides it?
Our school has bought a van and we provide the transport. We bought another one earlier this year and it's now full, which was a bit surprising to us, yes, but it's nice. We're getting children from all kind of walks of life, and people are recommending us to families, which is nice.
So with something like a bus, which is quite expensive to run, do you get funding for that? Or?
No, we get no funding because the ministry's policy is local schools for local children. However, many of our children have been to local schools and it hasn't worked for them, so they've decided to change to try and better meet
One of the
needs.
things, my children, both of them went to a rural school when we first came up here, and my son really did incredibly well, because being rural, it was smaller, so therefore far more pastoral, and you found that you connected into the teachers. We did the same thing with him at college, and we got him into Chanel, whereas my daughter absolutely wanted none of that. She was a child that was going to succeed no matter where you put her. So she chose differently.
Yeah.
Much to my dismay, she wanted to go boarding. So, that is what happened in the end. But the small pastoral school actually was amazing for my son, because he had processing difficulties.
Yeah.
He is now, thank goodness, I think 28 or 29, owns his own business, and an absolute fabulous young man.
I probably shouldn't say this, but success at school is no indicator of success at life. And we work on emotional regulation, social skills, self-esteem, all of that kind of stuff, because as a board of trustees and as a school, we feel that that's as important, if not more so important, than some of the government priorities. Obviously, children need to read and write and do maths. However, if they can't get on with other people, or they don't have the ability to put themselves forward in a positive light, they're not going to succeed, no matter how good they are at maths.
So if schools like yours have an emphasis on the important emotional intelligence, and then there are all these benchmarks that you have to meet that are set by the ministry, are there enough hours in the day to be able to do this? How do you work that one?
No, there's not. And so for me, some of the paperwork doesn't get done. But we feel that our children and our families are more important than that. So as a board, we've decided that that's the direction we're going to go in, and it does mean that some other things slip, but we believe that that will lead to better outcomes for our students and our whānau.
Well, I've often said to my children, my job as a parent is to ensure that you can survive out there, you can be totally self-sufficient out there in the world, because I won't always be here. So that's part of my job, to ensure that you will be out there. My partner doesn't agree, because he has one of his sons still at home, and I'm just saying to him, you're not doing him any favours.
Yeah.
If you pass away tomorrow, he'll be a homeless man with a little cart. And I think this is what's important. This is what you're focusing on, are these survival skills that everybody needs as they become adults and go out into the world. Yeah. And yes, as you said, we need reading. Stefan was very difficult, but it worked in the
But I think
end.
so long as kids know how to learn, they know what they're good at, they know what their weaknesses are, then they will be fine, because they can learn all through their lives. Like, my child has autism and ADHD. I didn't teach him to read, he taught himself, so he's also gifted. He learns more on Google than I could ever teach him. So the fact that he's got the skills to go on Google or to ask questions and find the information that he needs means that he's going to be okay.
That's fabulous, yeah.
I think too, with education obviously has to keep up with the times, isn't it? And we live in a very different world now than, say, Victorians who had 50 kids in a class, and they teach the oldest girl the tables and she'd go away and teach the others. I mean, that probably works really well. But so I think schools are presented with a huge challenge to reinvent or make education relevant to today.
It's interesting, because the government's pushing digital learning, and our school is actually moving away from that. We're looking at play-based learning, because we get a lot of children who have low oral language skills, low social skills, when they come in, and play is a natural way of improving those things and getting children ready to learn. In Finland, they don't start learning formally until they're 7, because the importance of play and relationships and talking is valued.
And that's something the Montessori and the Steiner systems recognise, don't they?
Yes, and we're really lucky, because this year our junior teacher is new, and she was trained in preschool in Montessori in South Africa. So we're very, very lucky
What
to have
a
Carol.
treasure.
Yeah, totally. And she's a behaviour therapist as well. So she's just amazing, and she's finished her New Zealand training last year. So we're incredibly lucky to have her and her knowledge around learning, around sensory disorders and all sorts of things. Yeah, and my other teacher, Lucy, is equally amazing, but has strengths in different areas. So we're able to group the children to what best suits their learning needs.
Yeah, to their
So we're not
strengths.
talking age. If they're, I know, for example, 10 and still need to play with the 7-year-olds, that's okay?
That's okay because they have to,
Yeah.
because there's only 29 of us, and, and up until
on.
this year there was only 18, and so there wasn't necessarily someone your own age to play with. And that's one of the reasons why we're a big family. You know, the kids are together for a long time, the staff are together with those children, we have great relationships with whānau, and everybody, you have to get along whether you want to or not, and so that's why you need the skills, so that when you're tired or angry, you can tell your friend or the person you're playing with that you've had enough in a positive way. Yes, it's
So when did you sit down and presumably at one point your school roll was quite low?
yeah.
When did you sit down and think, we've got to do something different? Where did that light bulb moment come from?
It was more that our clientele changed. So when I started 10 years ago, most of the children came from Morrisville. They were middle class white farming families or living in farming cottages. We were a Decile 5 school, which is kind of middle of the range. We're now a Decile 1 school, which is the lowest decile, and have many parents who are beneficiaries and have had challenges in their lives. So the light bulb moment didn't kind of come. It was our clientele's changing, so therefore the needs of our learners and their whānau are changing.
Well, to have 22 of them all coming out from Masterton is quite significant.
Yep.
But obviously there is, and you're building a reputation for your school, and you know that you teach with a slightly different philosophy and supportive philosophy. Would you like to expand?
I would like to expand on that. We tend to use a lot of contextual learning because learning from a book doesn't necessarily mean that you transfer the knowledge to a different situation, but it also means that if you're using real life context and things that children are interested in, they're more likely to engage and learn. So we have community members and staff that do things like movie making, woodwork, cooking, gardening. I take a group into King Street Art each week, which is amazing because there's all sorts of different people there with different needs and challenges, and it's good for our students to see adults who perhaps are struggling also. And the staff at King Street are just amazing. Yeah, so that's brilliant. We've done Make a Crate. So we try and use local resources as much as possible, because a lot of our children, I mean, we went to the beach one year and there was some that had never seen the sea before. It's like, oh my goodness, there's just lots of things you take for granted.
Yeah, so you're catering for 22 students. Can
30
you...
now.
Pardon?
30 now.
30?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how big is your school? How big can you... How many
We
can
kind
you
of
cater
think
for?
we're at capacity at the moment if we want to keep maintaining the quality of care that we've got. We're really lucky that our local RTLB service, which is Resource Teachers of Learning and Behaviour and Learning Support, are supportive of us, but they're kind of handcuffed by funding and government edicts as well, so they're not able to put a lot more in than is in place already.
Right.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to think outside the square and actually find different ways of doing things. Wairarapa community is a great community.
Oh, it's brilliant.
And there is a special autism group as well.
Yeah. So we have some children who go to Mandy's gym and go to the Awesome Kids program on a Tuesday afternoon. Yeah, which is brilliant.
Right.
So we work really closely with lots of agencies like SWIS, which is Social Workers in Schools, Supporting Families, which is around mental health, Autism Wairarapa, Connecting Communities. It just goes on and on. Yeah.
So that bus doesn't just get used to bring kids to school and take them home in the morning?
Oh, no. We go and do all sorts of things, and it's quite handy for me not having to use my car to go in and out for meetings as well.
I love the idea of the beach trip. You know, especially for people or children that have never had that experience before.
So we tend to do a camp each term, but it's a 1 or 2 night camp rather than a long week-long camp because our children wouldn't cope. Neither would our staff probably, and within the local area. So we were meant to go to Kiriwhakapapa this year at the start of the year, but the weather was so foul that we camped inside our school hall. We put all the tents up and stayed at school.
What fun! How hilarious!
But we normally go to Whakataki, to the beach, and to Mount Holdsworth, have an overnighter at the Clark Memorial Domain. So trying to give them lots of experiences in manageable chunks.
Right, yeah.
And we have parents and whānau and community members come because it's nice and close.
Yes, well, we've got the children's school holiday program on next week, and we take in 50 children. We cap off at 50.
Oh my goodness, 50.
And often
They're
we have
brave people at Carterton Event Centre.
or mad.
Bit of both goes well.
Because we often we do know in terms of if the children are coming with health or allergy or whatever issues, but you never quite know what's going to be in the soup mix, because every time we take children in, we give preference to children that have never attended previously.
And every child is different.
Exactly. But they all seem to enjoy it. Our community coordinator, Jerry Brooking, runs 5 workshops simultaneously through the day. And so there's usually never
Might
more...
have to take a van load in.
There's never more than 10 children, in each workshop. And they do everything. They do everything from making paper to making clay pendants to playing Xbox.
And it seems like it's just art or craft or gaming, but there's so many other skills that you use and that you learn while doing that. We've had 2 women come in and do craft with a group of students, and they've made beaded spiders, and just the fine motor skills and the turn taking and the discussions around, I shouldn't say insects, arachnids and things like that while you're making things is incredible.
Fantastic. Yeah. Oh, my goodness. It's been 10 years for you since the beginning, and now up to 30 students. So 10 years of your lifetime is actually quite a chunk in there.
I would like to say it is, but maybe I'm older than I look. I don't know.
Well, we don't want to get too personal.
Yeah.
No. But I have noticed whenever I've made a reference to Morrisville School, there's a lot of parents that are advocating for the school. And I think, Wairarapa being a really good community, we should look at, maybe a little bit of fundraising here and there and putting it out, because those parents that are advocating and out there, they're often in that very, very sort of area where they're financially they are poor. They've got lots of assets and talents in the in art and baking and things like this, but cash poor. And I guess that's what you would say about the school too. You're cash poor but asset rich.
And some people aren't even aware of the assets that they hold because they're not confident, so part of it's building parents' confidence as well. And helping them to be the best that they can be and reach their own potential. Yeah.
Wow. So you are a teacher and a counsellor and all the other bits and pieces that go along.
Kind of, but I think most
You're
teachers
a leader,
are now too.
a leader and a champion.
But not very good at paperwork, no.
Well, that doesn't matter.
Hey, we all have to fall down a little gap somewhere, don't we?
Can't be good at everything.
No.
You find someone who's good at paperwork. I hope you've got one of those.
Oh, my office administrator is absolutely brilliant. Yeah, I'd be lost without her. Yeah.
So have you got big grounds?
We have 2 classrooms, and that's the whole building, and a prefab that's derelict and about to be pulled down. And then we have a huge field, and we have access to a school and community hall, so it's owned by the community, the Morrisville Community Association, and so we share that facility.
So who maintains the grounds?
We have a groundsman who is amazing. He used to live in Morrisville and he now lives in Carterton and still travels out to come to school. He's 80. So we're hoping that he lasts as long as the tractor, because the tractor if we need a new tractor, but we don't want a new groundsman. Yeah, no, Norm is absolutely amazing.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, and he also does our cleaning 5 days a week and comes in and does interest learning with children and does model making and stuff, which is one of his hobbies and talents. And so it's a good opportunity to work one-on-one with a child and build relationship, because that's what a lot of children need, is they just need someone to be interested in them
And
and
to
spend time
mentor
talking to
them
them
and
listen to them and not
that
not have your cell
intergenerational-
phone while you're,
That intergenerational.
Oh, totally,
thing as well.
totally, yeah.
Well, I have to say too, if there's anyone out there listening, you do have to go through quite good police checks these days to work in schools. But I'm sure you'd be happy if somebody approached you if they had some particular area of expertise or skill that they would be happy to share with the children.
Totally, or just an interest that they want to find out more about too, and we can just all learn together.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know that, we have real treasures around the Wairarapa. You know, you find out about them as you go. But there are some, I know that the guys in the men's sheds, you know.
I was going to approach them this holidays for next term, and we're very lucky we've got a good relationship with vet care as well. So Heidi came out and looked at the pig to do a check on it when we first got it, and the pig's name is Waffles, by the way, I shouldn't call her it. And then the children did a competition for Heidi about information and lifestyle of a pig, and she chose five of those children to come in and be a vet for the day. So they got to see surgery and all sorts of things. So from that, we have one child that's absolutely adamant that she wants to be a vet now, and so she's heading in that direction. So our community, our careers education is pretty ad hoc, but the more opportunities and experiences you give children, the more they're able to work out what they like doing, what they're interested in.
Exactly. Well, and it's very difficult because in this day and age too, we're not in that same world where you choose and do something for 20 years. There's that. But if you're lucky, you get to do something that you remain passionate about. But I know for those 20-year-olds that are out there now, they've got to look at the fact that the future will hold
very different
a number of roles for them through their lives. So with all your children, what year do you go to?
So we start with 5-year-olds, which is year 1, and go all the way up to 12 and 13-year-olds, which is year 8. So we're a full primary. So we have quite a wide age range. But that's part of the challenge, and it also gives us opportunities for whanaungatanga and buddy work and children relating to each other and passing on their skills and learning from each other. Hello, did I stop petting you? I'm sorry. Yeah.
So I just want to sort of say, where is the nearest college for your students? So
Morrisville is zoned for pretty much Makota, and a lot of our children come from the east side as well. So I would say they will
transition into Makota.
Although we have a child who last year we applied for funding for, and he's boarding at Wairarapa College because a boarding situation was going to be better for him. So he's at Wairarapa College. So I suspect colleges are pretty much like primary schools, and you go to the one that is best going to meet your needs as a learner and as a person.
Hey, thank you so much for coming in today. We've covered quite a bit of ground, really.
It's been a great program for the last program.
I know, for the last program.
Bring on the tissues.
Yeah, well, I just think it would be really good if there was anybody out there watching or listening in, you know, if they have something that they might be able to offer, and it wouldn't matter if it was once a week or once a month, would it? You know, something to bring along and share. And I tell you what, the thing, you know, what you get back from the children and from doing it is probably twice the pleasure.
And I'm very lucky because my family has extended exponentially as well. So we really are a whānau, and we all support each other and help each other, which is brilliant.
Oh, that's excellent.
So you're never lonely?
Never lonely, and I always have someone who will look after my child, despite the fact that he does have challenges some days.
Oh, that's lovely. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I hope this little moment in time hasn't frightened you away totally from radio. I know it's a scary thing to do, but as I said, you'll be able to say to the children, I felt the fear, and I
Yeah.
did it anyway. And
There you go. That's something. A project. Make a
It
radio
is.
program.
Oh, Bridget, I
There
think
you go.
just.
We can come in.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Sometimes Veronica will even go out to
Yes,
schools.
take the equipment.
excellent.
Yes,
That
yeah.
would be brilliant.
So you could maybe take that a little
There
bit
you go.
further.
And
yeah.
can I take the dog as well, or is she staying?
No,
here?
she's spoken for. She keeps me walking, and we timeshare her with my son.
Oh, okay.
And she's come in to be with me just to have some one-on-one because they've
And
got
I
a
stole you. That's no good.
they've got a small child who's quite full on, 2
Yeah.
years old, Ryan, and Lottie was saying, I think I need a bit of a rest.
And you have a tail and ears, so that's not good for you.
No, I think they got pulled and she got sat on, and so she needed to come in just for a little bit of
TLC.
space away.
TLC. Okay, guys. Well, thank you. This is the very last program for Bridget and I at
We're
Carterton Connection.
It's been Cheryl's been with Carterton Connections a very long time. I'm a relative newcomer, but I have perhaps 5 years I've come and gone from
Yes.
this. I have really enjoyed it,
Yeah.
Cheryl. Thank you so much for. She collared me when I first moved into Carterton and said, "I need you on the radio." So I said, "Oh, all right." So like you,
It's a bit
I
like
went,
school. There's no
"Ooh."
escape.
No. So I've come and gone, and mostly I've really, really enjoyed every time I've come in here. Thank you, Cheryl.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And thank you, Carterton District Council, for
sponsoring the program.
Yeah.
And next week it'll be the very last show with Robin Velweaver. Okay, it's goodbye from us.
And it's
Thank
goodbye
you.
from them.
You're welcome.
You and I